שלום מכובדיי. נכנסתי לכם בפתאום.
Hello everyone, I guess it seems that I surprised you.
מכובדיי בכירי האוניברסיטה, אורחים.
Honored guests, directors of the university, my friend Amos Gilad.
מי עוד? אבל שלום לכולם.
Hello everyone.
מאז שהוקמה מדינת ישראל,
Since the state of Israel was established, it has been surrounded by threats and enemies.
בראשיתה,
During its early years, it was threatened by the Arab armies that Israel overcame by maintaining its military supremacy, making the state of Israel a fact for the region and for the rest of the world. Over the years, the threats have changed. Their intensity has changed, but Israel was always able to respond, to plan, to develop from the operational and technological perspectives, to adapt itself to guarantee safety and security for its citizens. This conference, entitled What is the necessary strategy for Israel from the security perspective? In order to answer that question, I would like to consider the threats with which we are faced. And the answer is clear. In addition to many other threats, we are currently faced with one significant strategic threat that faces the entire region, and that is the Iranian desire and action to become a regional hegemony and to obtain nuclear weapons. Regarding the strategy for coping with this threat, I would like to begin by saying that Israel does not stand alone. And the Iranian threat and the Iranian challenge is shared by other countries, not only Israel. And therefore, the strategy that we take against this threat must take into account that our allies and friends in the free world, especially the United States and other countries in the region, have the need to take action to eliminate this threat, and they have the ability to do so. The conflict between Iran and Israel is not related to territory or resources like other challenges and threats that we've faced in the past. This is an ideological conflict. While Israel is the only strong democracy in the region, Iran strives to put a radical regime in place that tramples human rights. Gays are hung in the streets. Women are excluded from the public. The regime controls all resources based on its own needs and not on the needs of its citizens. Israel must realize that must emphasize that we have no conflict with the Iranian people. Our conflict is with the Iranian regime that sees the battle with Israel as a milestone for achieving regional hegemony.
First we take Damascus.
As the song goes, first we take Damascus, then we take Berlin. The Iranian goal to become a regional and global hegemony is not solely an Israeli problem. The Iranian objective of destroying Israel is something that requires us to develop our own solutions. In other words, Iran has intentions, but it does not have the capabilities and must not have those capabilities, and that must be neutralized at the current stage. The responsibility for coping with the Iranian challenge is first and foremost that of the world that may find itself faced with an unstoppable, extreme and radical regional hegemony. Because how does Iran work? Iran uses economic influence to realize its political and security goals. Not only do we see the Iranian influence in Yemen, which is a country that is one of the most vulnerable and fragile of countries worldwide. Just last week, 14 UAVs attacked Saudi Arabia from Iran, apparently harming the airport and oil sites in the country. In Lebanon, which is experiencing severe crisis and severe shortages of food and fuel, Iran is funding Hezbollah with millions of dollars per year that goes mainly to the Shiites, thus tearing the country into pieces and destroying the ability to rule there. It funded the civil war in Syria, which is in order to plant its militias there to serve Iranian interests. We recently saw an attempt to assassinate the Prime Minister of Iraq that was also done using Iranian explosives. Iran transformed the marine areas into a war zone. Over the past few years, it has launched many attacks from its territories into targets at sea, many using explosive UAV drones. Two main bases were attacked in the Jabahar region in southern Iran, from which attacks were launched at maritime targets. We're using advanced explosive drones. But the Iranian influence is felt on the political level as well and causes diplomatic and security crises. Iran is trying to create islands of terror around the world, not only in the Middle East. It is involved in drug trafficking and money laundering all over the world. Iran, for example, transports weapons and oil to Venezuela and operates Quds Force operatives in the country. It created the political crisis in Venezuela in order to remove the U.S. from its areas of interest. As part of this policy, Iran has been working to increase its influence in Afghanistan as well, taking advantage of the horrific situation in the country in order to have an influence on other countries that border Afghanistan. The main methods that Iran uses is to undermine security and stability, damaging the national security of the countries in which it operates and that of their neighbors. Iranian terror is pursued throughout the Middle East and around the world. With the approval of Khamenei, the leader, 2 months ago, I exposed that Iran is not only manufacturing hundreds of drones and exporting them to their partners, but is also funding their development at different bases. Israel is feeling the influence of these actions, and it is felt in the entire region and worldwide. We saw the drones that were launched from Syria and the Iranian attempts to develop Hezbollah capabilities to launch precise attacks against Israel. And I would like to emphasize that drones are precision weapons that can target strategic targets in the region and worldwide. Most of the drones that we've seen so far came from South and Southeast Iran that were shot at maritime targets. Shahed missiles can travel hundreds of kilometers, as we saw when they were launched towards Yemen. This Iranian capability is already endangering the Sunni countries and international forces in the region, and is also endangering countries in Africa and Europe. We often think of drones as devices used to attack or collect intelligence, but Iran is developing additional capabilities using these drones that have not yet been exposed, but they make their capabilities more diverse and more extensive. Iran shot a Shahed 141 from Syria to Israel. At the time, Iran used the drone for a purpose that we had never seen before, and that was to transfer weapons to its proxies in order to mount attacks. The drone carried TNT explosives destined for terror operatives in Judea and Samaria, and it was intercepted by Israel near Beit She'an. In other words, Iran is not using drones only to attack, but also to deliver weapons to its proxies. Israel was able to intercept this capability last time, and we will continue to take action against any attempt by Iran to transfer weapons to its proxies. There are serious people here who are familiar with the international threats and those facing the region and Israel. As I said, Iran is not only a threat to Israel, it is a threat to the entire world, and that is why it is now time for the world to take action. Iran must not gain nuclear capabilities, because that will cause the unrestrained spread of its terror capabilities and a race of arms in the region. It will export weapons to its proxy countries and give them additional capabilities, making the Middle Eastern countries nuclear capabilities as well. This will make the region and the world more dangerous. We must not allow nuclear weapons to reach the hands of unstable regimes, and we must or to allow terror activity to develop in the weakened countries that Iran is taking control over. The world has many tools for contending with this threat, and it must implement Plan B based on diplomacy, economical and military methods, in addition to the political and diplomatic channels. We are working today in full cooperation with our friends in the United States and other countries, and it is important that we continue to do so. We remember that the world has the tools and the interest to stop Iran that is fighting against the United States and the rest of the world. The tools involve foreign policy and finances, and focusing on its stability and political level. Collecting the intelligence we collect is presented to our partners in secret. Last week I met with the U.S. ambassador to the UN, who said to me and said publicly that she prefers a diplomatic solution to a military solution, but the different solutions have to be on the table, including use of force, to support the diplomatic process. Sometimes demonstrating force can eliminate the need for applying even more force in the future. So the work that the United States has been doing and the sanctions it has imposed help us achieve our common goal. But it is important to emphasize that after saying that Iran is a global problem and a regional problem, we must not ignore the fact that it is a challenge for the state of Israel. And alongside the support of the United States and other countries, we ourselves will continue to take action to protect the security of the state of Israel. We will not be able to stand aside as they gain strength. We will build our own strength against them so that Iran will not obtain nuclear weapons. We will prioritize the security consideration and integrate it into our political processes and policies, allowing the IDF to carry out its main responsibility and role to protect the state of Israel and its citizens. With our friends and our capabilities, we will achieve our goals. Thank you very much.